So hello guys, welcome to a new video of economics class 11. Now in the last chapter we had completed up to the scarcity definition, or yes, we had completed to the scarcity definition, and tomorrow and today we are going to cover up a very small portion, which is the Samuelson's growth oriented definition. We are now studying about the various definitions of economics, which are mainly the wealth definition, welfare definition, scarcity definition, and the growth oriented definition. Now we had studied each definition in detail, starting from wealth to welfare and scarcity. Now in each definition we see that whenever a definition is introduced, then there are critics who criticize the definition, and then they introduce their new and modified definition. Afterwards, that definition which is newly introduced, that is also criticized, and a new definition is also introduced. So this process keeps on repeating forever and ever. First the wealth definition was introduced, then that got criticized, after which the welfare definition was introduced, that also got criticized, after which the scarcity definition was introduced, that was also criticized. Now the last definition which we have in our series is the growth oriented definition. Now we saw that the wealth definition was not at all compatible, it was not at all good. That is the reason the welfare definition came. But the welfare definition also, that was also not appropriate. So in the last we had a very appropriate definition which would do nearly each and everything which we required of an economics definition. But that was also lacking in one thing, that thing was that the scarcity definition told us that economics is the study of how the society and the human beings uses the resources to fulfill wants. We know that we have a lot of wants, and against those wants we have limited amount of resources. So our wants are unlimited, whereas our resources are very limited. So it becomes very important that these limited resources, they are used in such a manner so that the wants are also fulfilled and the resources also remain how much they should be. So this combination of wants and resources, this is the main focal point of economics. This was the definition given in the scarcity definition, which was given by Lionel Robbins. But this definition of resource allocation, that also lacked in a very much important manner. And what was that? That was that this definition which tells us about the resource allocation, this definition only talks about the present time, in the present moment, how the resources are and how can these resources be allocated to satisfy the want. It only talks about them in the present atmosphere. But in order to study in a more elaborative manner, we also need to consider the growth, means not only in the present but also in the future. This definition, this scarcity definition, that only talked about the present scenario, but we needed a definition that could also talk about the future scenario. Why? Because the wants which we have in the present, they also change with time, and the resources which we have in the present, they also change with time. So since each and everything, both the wants as well as the resources, they are changing over time, therefore it becomes very important that we need a definition which copes up with the changes. So this definition which could cope up with the changes, that was the growth definition by Samuelson. Okay. So this definition that focuses on the main thing, which is economic growth. So the growth oriented definition is given by Professor Paul A. Samuelson, which states that economics is the study of how people and society choose, with or without the use of money, to employ scarce productive resources which have alternative uses to produce various commodities over time and distribute them from consumption now or in the future among various people and groups in the society. Now if we look at the growth oriented definition, then we will find that a major portion is as same as the scarcity definition. What Samuelson said, that economics is the study of how people and society choose, with or without the use of money, to just a second. Yes, just a second, please. Yes, to employ scarce productive resources which have alternative uses to produce various commodities. Now I have highlighted two things: to employ scarce productive resources which have alternative uses, and the second one is to produce various commodities. Now these two things, to produce various commodities, this signifies the human wants. Why? Because we have human wants, and for that human wants only things are, and for that wants only things are produced. So this produce various commodities, this signifies the human wants. And the first point, to employ scarce productive resources which have alternative uses, this satisfies the resource allocation. So a major portion is as similar as to the scarcity definition. In scarcity definition we also talked about the resource allocation, like we have limited amount of resource and how can these resources be used. That had also been talked in the scarcity definition. But what is the main thing, or what is different from the scarcity definition? That is over time and distribute them for consumption now or in the future among various people and groups in the society. So the main thing which we are seeing is over time and now or in the future. Means here a time constraint has been added. Here the time constraint has been added, and this, apart from just talking about the present, also talks about over time, means about the future also. In the scarcity definition we only saw it is economics is the study of how resources are allocated to satisfy wants, but that was only in the present scenario. But this definition talks about over time and now or in the future, means the resource allocation and the want satisfaction, that is either in the present or in the future. So these two things are being talked over here. So to employ scarce productive resources which have alternative uses, or to produce various commodities over time and distribute them from consumption now or in the future. So the main thing which we are able to see over here is over time and now or in the future among various people and groups in the society. So this is something which is different from the scarcity definition. In the scarcity definition we had no mention of the time. There we were only talking about the present time, but here we are talking about the future. Okay, so this is the major difference between growth oriented and scarcity definition. Now if we talk about the features of growth oriented definition, then they are as follows: emphasizes on economic problems. Like the other definition, the growth oriented definition also emphasizes the problem of choice arising out of scarce resources and unlimited wants. Thus this definition gives a realistic explanation of economic problems. So the major thing is same, that this definition also talks about the problem of resource allocation and unlimited wants. But the thing which makes this definition more appropriate is that it talks about within a time period, now or in the future. So that is a very important thing which we are seeing over here, that this also talks about the same thing, but the extra thing which is over here is the time constraint. So this time constraint makes it a realistic explanation. Why? Because in the reality we do not only live in the present, we have a future also. So since that future is also being talked about in the growth oriented definition, therefore this definition is more realistic. Now the second feature is long-term perspective. The problems of scarcity of resources is not merely confined to the present time but also to the future. In conformity to this, Samuelson has taken the long-term perspective of economic problems. Herein lies the superiority of Samuelson's definition over that of Robbins. So this we have already talked, that in this scarcity definition there was only the present time. In the present time, how is the human being doing the process of resource allocation? But this definition, this growth oriented definition, this talks about the long term perspective. In the long run, in the future, how is this process of resource allocation being done? Okay. The third one is dynamic approach. Yes, the scarcity definition, that was only confined to the present moment, but this is also, this does not confine it to the present time, rather it is a dynamic in nature. Why? Because since it includes in itself the time which is changing, therefore it is a dynamic approach. So this scarcity definition of economics has imparted dynamism to economic problems as it take economic growth as integral part of economics. This has widened the subject matter of economics. So by including a time constraint, it has increased the subject matter of economics. It has made it a more dynamic thing. Why? Because we are saying over time. So since over time things change, therefore this makes it a dynamic approach. The fourth one is universal problem. The growth definition of economics is not only dynamic in context, but it is also wider in scope. It has rightly emphasized that the problem of resource allocation is a universal problem, both for barter economics as well as for money using economics. So the problem which is being talked in the growth oriented definition, the problem of resource allocation. So this definition says that this problem is not only confined to one country. It is not that only one country like India faces the problem of resource allocation. It is that each and every economy that faces the problem of resource allocation. Each and every country has to face the problem of resource allocation. Therefore, this definition gives a universal view of economics. The fifth one is comprehensive. Samuelson's definition of economics is very comprehensive. It is growth oriented as well as future oriented. It has incorporated Marshall's welfare aspect as well as Robbins' scarcity and choice aspect. So see, in this definition, each and every definition or some points of those definitions has been included. Here we get the welfare definition portion also. Why? Because in the welfare one we had seen that what is the welfare definition talking about? That human beings use their material things for their human welfare. So since this definition talks about the resources being used by the human beings, so the resources being a material thing are satisfying the welfare of the people. So this welfare aspect is also being included over here. After that, Robbins' scarcity definition has also been added over here, that the problem which a major economy faces is the resource allocation. So that problem is also being talked over here. So the growth oriented definition also includes points from Marshall's welfare definition as well as Robbins' scarcity definition. And the last one is broader perspective. Samuelson's definitions has broadened the subject matter of economics so as to include consumption, production, exchange, distribution, and economic growth. So as we saw in the scarcity definition, that it only includes the natural resources and the problem of their allocation. But this definition gives us a broader perspective because it includes all those economic changes which can take place with the growth of an economy. So this definition is a broader concept of the normal definitions. Now this definition also has a few critics as well, because this is a very widely accepted definition. So still, what are the characteristics? Even though Samuelson has placed requisite emphasis on production, consumption, and distribution of goods, scarce resources, money, and men, he did not take into account certain socio-economic and political factors which affect the well-being of human beings. He has underplayed the importance of development in the welfare of the society. Development indicators such as Human Development Index, Multidimensional Poverty Index, Gender Development Index, Gender Inequality Index, Physical Quality of Living Index have totally been ignored in his definition. So see, since this is also an economic definition, therefore it only takes into consideration the economic portions or the economic points. So this definition of Samuelson, it has also taken in only the economic things which can be included. It has only considered the economic things. Non-economic things are not being included over here. Social or socio-economic and political factors, they are not included in his definition also. Why? Because in reality it is, yes, although the growth oriented definition that gave a very broader view, but still it is not that much practical as we need. Why? Because the growth oriented definition that also takes in the economic elements. The economic elements are only being taken in the growth oriented definition, but in reality, apart from the economic elements, other such as socio-economic, sociological factors, political factors, technological factors, they also play a very important role. So these things are not being included. And the second one is, he has also neglected the role of service sector in the growth trajectory of a nation. There is no mention of services as being a want or an end in his definition. So the very important thing which we need to note over here is that these definitions of economics which we are seeing over here, these definitions have always considered in those wants, the material or the goods things. We know that there are two types of services, or there are two types of products which can be purchased. Either it can be a good or it can be a service. So in each and every definition which we see, they only consider this good. When we talk of the want, so what is this want for? Why do we need this want? We need this want for product, for things which can satisfy our want. So it is a universal truth that both goods as well as services satisfy our want. But these definitions, they only take this goods in the inclusion of these wants. They do not take these services. So these services are also satisfying our want, but these things are not being included. Therefore, this definition is also criticized on these things. But although in reality, if we talk about the criticism of the growth oriented definition, so that is very much less, because all those definitions which we have seen, in those definitions, this growth oriented definition, that is very much acceptable. Why? Because in reality it is that the main problem which every economy faces is resource allocation, and this problem is not static in nature but rather dynamic in nature. This changes with time. Each and everything changes with time. Therefore the policies for resource allocation, they also need to change. So although this growth oriented definition is the most appropriate, but still some criticisms are there, but they are not that much important. Okay, so we are done with this this growth oriented definition also. Now we'll now we are going to start our new chapter in the next video. I'm stopping this video over here only. So if you see this video of only 20 minutes, so don't worry, this video was actually of 20 minutes. It is not a glitch or something technical error because of which you are seeing the 20 minutes time. It is in reality that this video was of 20 minutes only. Okay, so we'll see you in a next video. So till then, do take very good care of yourselves. Have a very nice day. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye. Jai Hind.